Okay, hi, welcome everyone. I'm Ken Lebo, founder and CEO of InsurTech Express, and I'm excited to do an interview today with Dr. Justin Velton, who's the co-founder of GoCulture. And the subject today is moving EPL risk management upstream, detecting workforce risk before claims start. So today, what we're going to do is we're going to speak to Dr. Justin Velton, who's the co-founder, again, as I said, of GoCulture. He's also the creator of TeamShield, so I'm sure he's going to tell you more about that. Okay, which is a workforce risk prevention platform originally piloted inside the U.S. Special Operations Command. That's pretty impressive. Justin's work focuses on identifying early workforce risk signals, communication breakdowns, disengagement, and leadership friction that often precede employment lawsuits. Very important. Retention crisis and reputational damage. So these are very serious things that can happen to your organization. So in this conversation, we explore how workforce insight and InsurTech platforms could help the insurance industry shift from defending claims to preventing them. And that's the key here. So Justin, thank you. Appreciate you taking the time for this interview. And I see that you spent years studying workforce communication and engagement across federal and enterprise organizations. And so what led you to view this as a risk management issue rather than just an HR topic?
Yeah, Ken, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be with you. And it's a great question. So I did come from a higher ed background. I was a college prof for about 14 years and did a lot of research. My doctorate is in what's called communication, intercultural communication. And so I was involved for about 20 years. We did studies in over 40 countries. And we were really looking at the human engagement piece kind of cross-culturally, but also led us to identifying several key indicators that we could then assess and do some predictive analytics to understand, hey, there's a workforce issue brewing here. And so can we recognize that before it happens and then do something to prevent it from this kind of trigger moment of somebody being harassed or claiming harassment and those kinds of things. And so a lot of that research pointed us in that direction. And we've done various kinds of work with that research and those findings. Risk management and risk mitigation seems to be, especially in the corporate world, where that kind of work exists. HR it is wonderful, benefits, and people issues and things like that. But we're trying to move that upstream, if you can use kind of this insurance terminology, rather than just seeing risk as something we mitigate the damage of something that's happened. Can we recognize and prevent early on?
Gotcha. So, so from an industry context perspective, I mean, I've seen many carriers invest heavily in defending EPL claims. So why do you think the industry has historically focused more on defense rather than prevention?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of that comes down to, Ken, that there has been an assumption and that there's no way to prevent this. It's going to happen. And so let's focus our efforts on when it does happen, when somebody says, hey, I've been harassed by my boss, and this has been going on for 2 years, that the best we can do are hire attorneys to come in and try to mitigate, reduce the damages, or even try to make it not go away is the wrong word, but can we fight this? Was there really harassment? Those kinds of things, mitigating the damage. And what we're doing is not making it all go away. What we're doing is saying, well, turns out there is actually a way to recognize these indicators And now with AI and things that we're doing, can we recognize this way upstream to say this is coming, but look, here's where it is. Can we get ahead of
Right.
that? Here's how you get ahead of that. And to reduce the likelihood of those things becoming full-blown claims, which is not only good for your insurance carrier on the financial and the loss ratio side, but it's also extremely valuable just from the business and the commercial customer, right? Being able to prevent disruptive and financial mishaps that come from workplace issues. I mean, it's just a piece of workplace. When you get people together, there are going to be issues, but can we reduce the likelihood of those? That's what we're trying to do.
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. So what kinds of early signals inside organizations often show up months before harassment claims, retaliation cases, or toxic workplace allegations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've spoken to several legal firms that deal with EPL, harassment, workforce type claims, and many of them will tell you, when you're doing the deposition with somebody who's made a claim, they're going to say, hey, this has been going on for a while. Okay, well, if it's been going on a while, why did we just now know about it? And in the past, there have been these kind of traditional whistleblower lines,
Right.
and those can be helpful, but somebody has to get to a pretty extreme point to call that line. There's kind of a stigma that comes with that. I've equated it when I've spoken in front of risk mitigation type groups, risk management. It's if you're standing at the gas station,
Right.
and it's full of people pumping gas, and one of the people who's pumping gas walks over and lights up a cigarette just 10 feet from the pumps because they think that's safe. Everybody's kind of looking around at each other. I mean, you feel like, hey, should I yell something? Should I say something? Or there's also this big red button that stops the entire operation, right? It's that emergency stop in case of a
Right.
fire. So you see that button, but that's kind of like that whistleblower line. I think people feel like, I'm being harassed. I think that's what this is, or it's toxic, or I'm being mistreated in some way. Do I hit the big red button and stop operation to draw attention to this, or do I just keep dealing with it until it bubbles to the point where I'm done? I'm past the point of return. This is it. I'm going to HR and I'm making an official claim here. No, the reality is that discomfort's been happening for a while. So how can we actually get people to say something's going on here, whether they name it or not? A great example of that, last summer was the Coldplay concert, right? With the CEO and the HR leader, ironically.
We all saw that.
Yeah, absolutely. They're snuggling up at this Coldplay concert and get caught on the kiss
Yeah.
cam, and so that became a huge deal, major fallout.
Yep.
I mean, if I worked for that company, I probably would have known that was going on, and certainly if I worked within that circle, I would have known something was going on. But what do? Do I hit the big red panic button, or am I more likely, if an external institution, organization is feeding me questions every once in a while, maybe on a monthly basis, non-identifiable, say, hey, tell us what's going on, just a handful of questions, opportunity to write some things. And then if something is flagged in our system, that we notify, whether it be leadership, or if it's about leadership, maybe going to the board level and saying, hey, something's going on here.
Right.
Here's what we think should be done about that. Or in some cases, the system even, the capability of saying, here's what we're seeing, here's where we're seeing it, here's what you should do about it, now, rather than waiting until later, so that we can
Yeah.
reduce the likelihood of that bubbling to an actual incident.
Yeah, it's good that you can handle the sensitivity piece, but you're getting it way ahead before it blows up. So it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So let's talk about the tech stuff. I mean, How could technology and AI help carriers and employers detect workforce risk signals earlier?
hmm Yeah, it's a good question. Right now, if you're thinking about, insurance in the P&C space that deals directly with EPL or EPL tangential type coverages, really the model right now is to look at, okay, how many have you been a problem child as a customer in the
Right,
past with harassment? Okay, well then we probably assume that you're higher risk, and maybe we should focus more on like a specialty carrier or something like that. But that is a lot of post hoc analysis, right? We waited
right,
and saw that, oh, you are kind of a bad actor or have a lot of bad actors there. Let's look at maybe instead knowing ahead of time before we price and place and bind insurance. Could we know that there are a lot of indicators here that you are a high risk organization for future claims? Could we, so that's how you kind of move it from way it's priced and done now to where we can actually predict. In talking to law firms, a big piece, of course, they're always looking at defensibility, but we're not only looking at predictability on our end, we're actually looking at the defensibility piece. So it's kind of twofold, moving that mitigation up to prevention upstream, but then you can't catch everything, right? So when something does happen in an organization, how is the legal team defending the carrier? How are they prepared and equipped to defend? And if we can show, if somebody says, hey, I work for Ken, and for the last 2 years, Ken has been harassing me and it's been toxic, and these are the things, and so I make that claim, it's difficult to defend against, did that really happen or did it not happen? And so if I can show you data from that organization, non-identifiable, over the past 2 years, and there has never been anything but positive things said about Ken, is it really true? Could it be maybe that is just kind of fabricated? That's one piece of that, among several pieces of how we defend a harassment claim. And that is
right,
something that's becoming very interesting in the legal field, of having that kind of data. It also allows legal teams to separate the bad actor from the good corporate citizen in those cases, because the good corporate citizen was saying, look, we are not only giving you the big red stop button, right, to call, but we're being proactive. We're doing everything we can to give you an opportunity to confidentially say, hey, something's going on, so that we could go in and figure something out and fix it ahead of time. But whether you did or didn't do that, but it separates the person, the bad actor, from the corporate citizen, and that's really powerful as well in defense.
yeah, no, absolutely. And I can see that if you're looking for patterns and consistencies or inconsistencies and doing those types of analytics with all the data that you're capturing, can be very powerful in making determinations. So what role might InsurTech platforms play in integrating workforce risk insights into broader risk management ecosystems?
hmm Yeah, again, right now, when you look at platforms that carriers utilize in the workforce side of things, typically, then there are several great vendors out there who do harassment trainings and kind of HR solutions and platforms and things like that. But
Right,
again, HR harassment type trainings are sometimes mandatory, but also they are become kind of boilerplate, right? And we've all been through those, and they're kind of a have to type thing, but they're not doing anything to recognize and predict. And so we're talking with several of those vendors right now about where does a capability like what we've developed and tested over the years sit
right,
inside one of these. we've worked with, I said, a lot with federal government agencies. And federal government agencies, unfortunately, are oftentimes plagued with workforce challenges. And so one case, and they've been very open for us to share this publicly, because they were just really pleased with the outcome. And so, but I won't name them by name, but they, about 200 employees, over 20 harassment claims a year, which is a lot, but they couldn't wrap their head around what's going on. They're a dispersed workforce around the country. So they brought us in. We started out with some of these TeamShield type assessment modeling, and quickly helped them understand, well, this is what's going on here. And it's very eye-opening very quickly. And so they made really, Ken, some very subtle, small changes in some workforce policy and things. And they went from 22 claims a year to 0 claims a year over year.
Oh, wow.
From there. And what that means for the organization is, I mean, there's a financial burden that comes with that, but there's also hey, life's a lot easier and better, and we're much more productive now. That's great for the organization. But if you asked earlier, what got us into this space of the insurance world, is that we realized what we did just in that one case, for example, through a scalable platform, we can back that up. And if you've got 40,000 commercial customers, we can roll that out for all 40,000 and be reducing that risk for each organization. Similarly, that one small agency was about a $4 million risk per year that went to 0 a year.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. So on the business side of it, talking about business impact, if insurers begin treating workforce risk more like cyber risk or workplace safety, how might that change underwriting and risk management?
Yeah. One of the things that's always surprised me, Ken, and again, this is one of the reasons we're in the insurance space now, is because I was frankly blown away by carriers providing every tool imaginable to prevent claims. They were providing the water sensors that are AI driven, right, to be able to predict in a warehouse that's housing, $50 million worth of product, and you give the $100 item that sits in the warehouse, predicts sees humidity changes, predicts water leak issues and water damage, prevents a $30 million claim by giving a small item to prevent. We're doing the same thing around fire hazards, cybersecurity training, all these things. But other than harassment training, nothing is being done on the prevention side when it comes to people. So we're preventing everything else that we can, but we've always assumed, again, that in this pie, there's this gap that is people. And we think, well, let's just hope nothing happens. But when it does, let's try to reduce the damages in the back end if we can. And so what we're doing is stepping in to fill that gap and say, well, actually, there is a way we can see it ahead of time, notify and correct course so that the claim doesn't actually happen. And so I think that's going to be one of the greatest innovations in this space over the next number of years, because, and when we call this workforce risk prevention, our tool is called TeamShield. You mentioned that earlier. But workforce risk prevention is filling that gap. We're not preventing water damage, we're not preventing cyber issues necessarily, but what we are doing is preventing workforce mishaps related to relationships and things like that. Interestingly, as a side note, when we ask questions of employees, we get a lot of information that they feel safe, which is great to pour out. And one thing that I've noticed is they'll oftentimes share tangential items. For example, if you're asking about workplace toxicity, well, they'll give you information about safety hazards. And think how valuable that is if you're not only a P&C carrier, but you're also maybe a workers' comp carrier. The challenge is for organizations, especially at scale, and as they grow, every time leadership shows up and says, how are things going? Everybody, especially other leaders, want to say, hey, nothing to see here. Everything's fine, right?
Typical reaction.
So you think, okay, everything is fine. Well, you put a focus group together to figure out what's going on at the ground level. Well, we've all sat in focus groups, and they can be very valuable for certain things. But when you're talking about, hey, tell us about your supervisor, I sat in one years ago, and I looked around the room as a real young guy and thought, well, why is nobody saying what's really going on? Okay, I'll say it, right? And I did, and I didn't last there much longer, right? Because I told the truth. And so so that we need an avenue to come in, someone to come in and say, look, we're an advocate for you. Tell us what's really going on. We'll protect that information. Let us help you fix it from the top end down. And that seems to have worked really, really well. And like I said, across federal government, other corporate entities, and we're just really hoping to expand that at scale with carriers who could really see that be an impact on their loss ratio.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So going back to brokers and carriers, I mean, how can they benefit from helping clients address workforce issues earlier?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think carriers and their vendors are always looking for that stickiness, right? In a commoditized field, and people even now more than ever look to jump providers, and it is, as you know, a very relationship-based business, but still money is money, and we want to go to the cheapest or the one that looks most flashy or whatever. And so, but if I can show you that we are the only ones or one of the only few, whether it be from a brokerage or from the carrier, we're the ones helping you reduce the headache, not only the cost, but the headache inside your workforce by providing a quote unquote free service that is almost like an workforce consultant in a way, that's happening behind the scenes quietly, that's helping us be aware and prevent at scale. That it just makes sense from brokerage to carriers to the businesses they serve. It's really a win-win type situation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, let's kind of wrap up with this. I mean, for leaders in the InsurTech ecosystem, what should they be watching over the next 5 years, which is an eternity, I know, as workforce risk prevention evolves?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, AI is the big thing now, and it is certainly something that we have embedded into our system, and kind of a conversational pieces within our system. And gone are the days of having to run, having to learn a whole new dashboard and run queries that are unique to this system versus this system. You just have a conversation with your data set, right, through your AI, and that's really powerful. And so I think those are the things that are going to be shaping the next season. In this space, specifically in EPL space, you've heard this term, social inflation, and I think what we're going to begin seeing more and more of, and this is why things like what we provide are getting more and more traction, is because in the past, for carriers, EPL coverages and things were kind of a little bolt-on over here that there wasn't much revenue for them in that. It wasn't that big of a deal, right? Well, if we can upsell it, to some of our customers, great. If not, whatever. But now we're seeing this become a much, much, much more painful situation for carriers, because these claims are becoming more frequent because people are becoming more sensitive and saying that, hey, I can claim, yell harassment, and it's much more of a, hey, this is a big deal and we need to get on this. I'm getting the attention, and there are greater dollar amounts that come attached to, if I can prove and I can make a case So these attorneys with all the billboards, we can get you $45 million. Where they're more proactively pursuing those customers to want to lay a harassment claim at the foot of these mega organizations. And so that is getting the attention of carriers because those claims are becoming more and more nuclear, thermonuclear, 10 million or more per case, when they should be, not that they shouldn't be a case. I mean, maybe it's a $70,000 oops, we did do something wrong. Here, let's make you whole, to let's make a point. And so we're trying to help these businesses and the carriers who represent them on the coverage side be better equipped from not only prevent these things, but when they do happen, have some data, have some background information to defend themselves more adequately.
Yeah. So, I mean, if I'm hearing you, it's like the old adage, there were no shipwrecks before ships.
Yeah.
So now that you're, so now that you're having, these huge claims, I mean, to really get ahead of that and put preventative solution in place in your organization is going to save you a lot of headache and financial hardship down the road. So totally get it. Well, thank you, Justin. This has been extremely informative. Now I want to get the website right so people can get a demo and learn more. It's GoCulture.com. Is that correct?
That's right. GoCulture.com.
Absolutely. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Ken. Take care.
You too.